Rosie Alfaro, 30 years on death row in the state of California. On July 14, 1992, Alfaro received a death sentence for the murder of a 9-year-old girl who was a victim of a June 15, 1990 robbery and break-in in Anaheim, California. The 9-year-old was stabbed 57 times by Alfaro, who was just 18 at the time of the crime, and she was expecting twins. The victim, Autumn Wallace, gave Alfaro permission to enter the house because she recognized her as a frequent visitor and a friend of her older sister. Alfaro arrived and requested permission to use the restroom inside, while Autumn was home alone waiting for her sister and mother to get home from work. Alfaro had not anticipated finding someone at the Wallace home when she had planned to approach it. When she did, she understood that she had to get rid of Autumn since she would have known who had broken into the house. Alfaro stabbed Autumn 57 times before stealing anything that appeared to be valuable. Autumn's mother, Linda Wallace, discovered her daughter's body in the bathroom many hours later. Celeste Carrington, 28 years on death row in the state of California. Victor Esparza, a 34-year-old janitor at a shoe factory in San Carlos, and Caroline Gleason, a 36-year-old property manager at a real estate agency in Palo Alto, both died after being shot by Carrington in separate robberies 2 months apart, according to authorities. She shot and injured Redwood City pediatrician Alan Marks during a heist in his office 5 days after killing Gleason. Carrington was fired from her work as a janitor in December 1991 for stealing checks, despite the fact that she had no prior criminal history at the time of the murders. According to defense testimony, Carrington was raised in a poor household in Philadelphia, subjected to parental abuse, and became pregnant at the age of 14 by her father. After graduating, she competed internationally in the shot put while starring in track and field at a community college in Southern California. Cynthia Coffman, 33 years on death row in the state of California. Kaufman was found guilty of 5 murders and has spent the last 2 decades on California's execution row. According to court records, she and her partner James Marlowe committed multiple crimes across several states, leaving a trail of dead bodies in their wake. Kaufman did confess to killing 4 people to the police and ultimately to the jury, but she argued that James Marlowe's power over her was what caused these horrific deeds. She was found guilty of committing another murder in a 1992 trial, and as a result, she was also given a life sentence. She was born in Missouri, St. Louis. She was raised by her mother after her father abandoned the family. At one time, Kaufman's mother tried to give her and her brothers away. She got married at age 18 and gave birth to a child, but the union did not last. With a friend, she relocated to Arizona, where she later met Marlowe soon after he was released from prison. Kerry Lyn Dalton, 27 years on death row in the state of California. Irene Melanie May was tortured and killed in 1988 in San Diego County, California by Dalton, who believed May had stolen her jewelry. She was accused of using a cast iron frying pan, a knife, and a syringe filled with battery acid to commit a torture murder with 3 other people, Mark Lee Tompkins, Cheryl Ann Baker, and another guy only known as George. The trial and the conviction have been the subject of many discussions regarding the legitimacy of the charges, since a body has never been found and there is no actual record of Dalton confessing to the crime. The prosecution has been accused of presenting hearsay as plain evidence to the jury. Dalton remains on death row for the time being, and her sister is fighting to change this. Susan Eubanks, 26 years on death row in the state of California. Eubanks killed her 4 sons, Brandon, 14 years old, Austin, 7 years old, Brigham, 6 years old, and Matthew, 4 years old, on October 26, 1999. All of the boys were shot in the head, and she then shot herself in the stomach but survived. At the time of the crimes, Eubanks' 5-year-old nephew was also in the house, but he was discovered uninjured. The prosecution claimed that Eubanks had killed her sons out of pure rage. This rage was supposedly a reaction to her resentment at their fathers and her boyfriend for choosing to break up with her. It was alleged that she wanted the dads to understand the sorrow of losing someone they had loved, and that she felt the urge to seek some kind of retribution for the failed relationships. The defense argued that the killings happened as a result of the defendant blacking out, and that because of this weakened mental state, she was not in control of her conduct. It was said that she turned into a robot and did what she believed would make her anguish go away after spending the day drinking, using prescription medicines, and dealing with recent domestic conflict and past heartbreak. Moren McDermot, 32 years on death row in the state of California. In order to obtain mortgage insurance on a home they jointly owned, McDermott, 37 years old, a former nurse, paid an orderly at the hospital where she worked to murder her male roommate, Stephen Eldridge, 27 years old. McDermott and Eldridge both purchased a $100,000 life insurance policy in December 1984, naming the other as beneficiary. Their bond weakened around the beginning of 1985. Eldridge expressed concern about the defendant's animals as well as the untidy state of the home, Eldridge's handling of McDermott's pets, and his intentions to sell his stake in the property upset McDermott. In February 1985, McDermott offered Jimmy Luna $50,000 to murder Eldridge, and he agreed. They decided to not use a gun so that they would not make a lot of noise and opted for stabbing instead. Thinking of ways to make sure the police would not look into it too much, they tried to make it look like Eldridge was gay. Luna requested Marvin Lee's assistance in the murder in March 1985. He offered Marvin $3,000 to watch his back and claimed that a group wanted someone killed. Marvin agreed. After a failed attempt to commit the crime while Eldridge managed to escape and take shelter at a neighbor's house, a fourth person joined the group. This was Marvin's brother Dondell. On the day of the murder, April 28, 1985, Luna, Marvin, and Dondell entered the home through the front bedroom window around 8:15 p.m. Eldridge had not yet arrived from a dinner appointment. In order to give the impression that Eldridge was killed when he returned home while McDermott was being robbed, she instructed Luna to slash her on the breast and inner thigh, which he did. Eldridge arrived home at about 10:40 p.m. Dondell met him inside the home with a firearm that belonged to McDermott but had been given to him by Luna. Eldridge was then taken down the hallway by Marvin Lee in a chokehold, where he was repeatedly stabbed by Luna until he collapsed to the ground. After that, Luna went back to Maureen McDermott's room, where he discovered her on the floor with a facial wound. After telling Luna that she had hit her head on the bedside table, Maureen McDermott asked if the wound looked convincing. Marvin heard McDermott yell from the rear bedroom not to forget to remove Eldridge's private parts, as Luna and the two Lee brothers were ready to leave the residence. Luna did as he was told. Eldridge had received 44 stab wounds. 28 of the 44 stab wounds were lethal on their own. Luna was detained on May 23, 1985 for questioning, but he was freed after 72 hours. He was detained again on July 2, 1985 for the first-degree murder of Eldridge. Maureen McDermott was also detained in August 1985. Marvin Lee, who was being held for a separate crime, was given immunity in return for confessing to the murder of Eldridge and giving an accurate account. Dondell Lee received immunity in August 1986 while under the California Youth Authority's care. Luna entered into a plea deal in July 1989 when he admitted culpability to first-degree murder and promised to give an accurate account of his actions in Maureen McDermott's prosecution. Mary Samuels, 28 years on death row in the state of California. In order to get rid of her 40-year-old husband, who she was divorcing, Samuels hired a hitman and she was found guilty. Additionally, she was found guilty of ordering the hitman's death. Mary Samuels killed Robert Samuels for money, including $240,000 in insurance, $70,000 from the Subway sandwich shop that they continued to jointly own despite going through a divorce, and $160,000 from the refinancing of the couple's home. She was dubbed the Green Widow by police and prosecutors after spending almost all of the money in less than a year. A male companion's photo from some time after the killings was produced as evidence and showed Samuels in bed completely covered in cash. On December 8, 1988, Robert Samuels was shot in the back of the head at his Northridge home. According to the evidence, the alleged hitman bought a $25,000 life insurance policy the day after Samuel's body was discovered, listing Samuel's daughter Nicole as the beneficiary. The hitman was in fact engaged to Nicole Samuels. He was found dead, strangled, battered, and abandoned alongside the road in a remote Ventura County canyon 7 months later. Mary Samuels hired Paul Edwin Gall and Darrell Ray Edwards to commit the crime. Robin Lee Rowe, 29 years on death row in the state of Idaho. Rowe killed her husband and 2 children when she set fire to their Ada County house. She is the only female on death row in Idaho. The killings happened on February 10, 1992, when a fire broke out on the first floor of the apartment where Rowe's husband, from which she was separated, and her 2 kids were residing. Her husband Randy and children Joshua, 10 years old, and Tabitha, 8 years old, were discovered dead when emergency personnel arrived at the scene of the burning building. Carbon monoxide poisoning caused the deaths of the 3 people. Fire investigators came to the conclusion that the smoke alarm had been switched off and that a liquid accelerant had been utilized to start the fire. Rowe was the primary suspect. There were many warning signs that pointed to Robin Rowe as the major suspect. One of Robin Rowe's 2 additional children reportedly passed away from sudden infant death syndrome. The other, a toddler boy, perished in a mystery fire in California. She and her son Keith were residing in a California cottage back in 1980. Her child was killed in a fire that started when his blankets caught fire from a portable heater. Rowe received $28,000 on the life insurance coverage after the boy passed away. Detectives discovered that Rowe had purchased over $250,000 worth of life insurance policy on her husband and kids. Antoinette Frank, 27 years on death row in the state of Louisiana. In 1995, Antoinette Frank, then a rookie New Orleans police officer, tormented the family-run Kim Ann restaurant with Roger Lacaze, killing Officer Ronald Williams and the Wu siblings Ha and Kwong in the process. Author Chuck Hustmeyer, a former policeman himself, claims that Frank lied about her psychological and psychiatric state when she applied to be a cop in Louisiana in order to be appointed as a policewoman. Frank worked for the New Orleans Police Department for a little less than a year, despite being found to have lied in various areas of her application. She met her future boyfriend during a shooting. Roger Lacaze, a drug dealer, was seriously hurt and needed Frank's assistance that night as well as hospitalization. Frank fell in love with Lacaze even if he was 18 years old when they met and she was 5 years older than him. It is reported that she even let him drive her police car. The pair decided to rob the Vietnamese restaurant on March 4, 1995. They both got caught and sentenced to death for the murders, but Lacaze was resentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole in December 2019. It is important to mention that the last execution of a woman in the state of Louisiana was carried out back in 1942, when Tony Joe Henry died in the electric chair. Blanche Taylor Moore, 32 years on death row in the state of North Carolina. Moore was found guilty of poisoning her boyfriend's food with arsenic, which led to his death. Moore is suspected of using the same method to kill 3 additional people and nearly kill a 4th. Police started looking into Moore in 1989 after her second husband, Dwight Moore, developed odd medical complaints. His condition was caused by arsenic poisoning, according to toxicology tests that were ordered by a doctor. He ingested a significant amount of poison over the course of a week, yet he managed to survive. The bodies of Moore's first husband, James Taylor, who passed away in 1973, and her ex-boyfriend, Raymond Reed, were requested to be excavated by the police after they developed suspicions about Moore. It was discovered that both males had been poisoned with arsenic. Moore's father passed away from symptoms resembling those of arsenic poisoning as well. Other alleged victims include a number of close friends and family members who unexpectedly passed away while displaying some symptoms of poisoning, although none of them had been excavated for additional analysis. Her mother-in-law Isla Taylor is another potential victim. According to rumors, Moore killed the men in her life because of a deep hatred for her drunken father, who compelled her to become a prostitute in order to support the family. Christa Pike, 27 years on death row in the state of Tennessee. She was found guilty of torturing and killing her classmate Colleen Slemmer when she was just 18 years old. Christa believed that Colleen was trying to steal her boyfriend, Tadarill Shipp. On January 12, 1995, Pike, Shipp, Slemmer, and another friend of Pike's, Shadola Peterson, left their university dormitories to take a walk in the woods. Colleen was told that the purpose of this gathering was to reach an agreement and stop the constant fighting between them. What she didn't know was that both Pike and her boyfriend had developed an interest in the occult and satanic worship, and they had other intentions. Slammer was attacked by Pike and Ship, while Peterson served as lookout. In later court testimony, it was stated that Slammer was taunted, beaten, and cut over the following 30 minutes, while also having a pentagram etched into her chest. Slammer was killed when Pike finally crushed her skull with a sizable piece of asphalt. A portion of Slammer's skull was retained by Pike, and the next day she started showing it around to other students. This is what led to the group's arrest less than 36 hours later. While Pike received the death penalty, her boyfriend got life in prison with the possibility of parole, and Peterson pled guilty, but she only got probation because she became an informant. It was discovered that Christa Pike had all three major common traits between murderers: a history of childhood abuse, a mental illness, and brain damage, most probably due to prenatal alcohol exposure. If the state carries out the punishment, she will be the first female to be executed in Tennessee in more than 200 years. Britany Hallberg, 25 years on death row in the state of Texas. An 80-year-old white man was robbed and killed by Hallberg inside his house. The guy was stabbed about 60 times and hit with a hammer. The weapons used were a fork, a butcher knife, a grapefruit knife, and a paring knife. A lamp pole had been shoved more than 5 inches down the victim's throat. Towery, the 80-year-old man, engaged Britany Holberg, a prostitute, for a job. Towery was incorrectly depicted as an elderly guy who was innocent during the trial, according to defense attorney Catherine Brown Dodson, and Holberg acted in self-defense when Towery attacked her. According to testimony, the victim also struggled with drug use. Russell Towery, his son, testified that his father once drew a knife on him while having a rage. The victim's violent past with his ex-wife and kids was also shown as proof. This case sounds like it's a bit more in the gray area, as there is enough evidence to show that Holberg might have really acted in self-defense. Darlie Routier, 26 years on death row in the state of Texas. Routier was found guilty of stabbing and murdering her 2 young sons, Damon, 5 years old, and Devon, 6 years old. Devon and Damon were killed by a huge kitchen knife, and Routier herself was stabbed in the arm and throat. Routier reported to the police that an unidentified intruder was responsible for the incident. The defense argued that there was no reason Routier would have killed her children, and that the case lacked a motive, a confession, or any witnesses. During the trial, the prosecution claimed that Routier's injuries were self-inflicted, that the crime scene had been staged, and that she killed her sons due to the family's financial difficulties. There are DNA tests pending results, as Routier has always maintained her innocence. Erica Ivon Shepard, 28 years on death row in the state of Texas. Shepard was found guilty of killing Marilyn Meager during a robbery. Marilyn Meager was taking clothing from her automobile into her apartment on June 13, 1993, when Erica Shepard and James Dickerson decided to steal her of her car. While Meager begged for her life, the couple tackled her inside her apartment and repeatedly sliced her throat with knives. She was then pounded in the head with a 10-pound statue after having her head covered in a plastic bag. In March 1995, Shepard received a death penalty verdict. James Dickerson also received the capital punishment, but he died from AIDS on death row before the execution could be carried out. Both Shepard and Dickerson were just 19 years old at the time of the crime, and Erica was already a mother of 3 children. She said that she was present when the crime took place and that she was guilty of not doing anything to stop it, but claims she was not the one to actually commit the murder.